Family dinners are meant to bring us closer, but on my grandson's birthday, I learned just how far my own family had pushed me away. Before we dive into all of this, let us know in the comments where you're watching this video from. Connecting with viewers across the world is a huge source of inspiration for us. I should have known something was wrong the moment I rang the doorbell. Daniel usually greeted me himself always with that warm, sheepish grin that reminded me of the boy who once held my hand too tightly crossing the street. But today, it was Claire. My daughter-in-law opened the door, one manicured hand gripping the brass handle as if she owned the house. And maybe, in her mind, she did. "Oh, Evelyn," she said flatly, not bothering to move aside. Her smile, if you could call it that, barely curled at the corners. That tonedry and clipped was one she reserved just for me. It had the weight of something polite but razor-sharp, the kind of tone that made you feel like an inconvenience, even when you were standing on the porch of your only child's home, holding a gift for your grandson's 5th birthday. "I brought something for Ethan," I said, lifting the small brown bag tied with blue ribbon. Inside was a hand-knitted sweater-ski blue with tiny white clouds, made over the course of 3 quiet weeks between work and bedtime tea. Claire's eyes swept over me like a scan. From my black wool dress me nicest, bought in 1997 for a retirement dinner, to my worn flats that I'd polished that morning. Her nose twitched, unimpressed. "Daniel's still getting ready. Guests are inside," she said, not moving an inch. "Guests?" I repeated. Last week, Daniel had called and invited me to a quiet little family dinner for Ethan's birthday. The call was brief. His voice had been tight like it always was when Claire was within earshot. "I'll just wait inside then," I murmured and stepped past her, gently brushing the threshold. She didn't offer to take my coat. Inside, the difference struck me like a gust of cold air. The living room sparkled under the glow of a crystal chandelier I'd never seen before. The air was scented with something floral and expensive. Couples stood in clusters, men in sharp blazers and women in heels that looked painful but beautiful. I recognized some of them from social pages in the local paper, from fundraisers and country club newsletters. There, across the room, was Ethan, me little sunshine. His laughter rang out like wind chimes in spring. The moment he saw me, his face lit up. "Grandma!" he yelled, running full speed. I knelt just in time to catch him, wrapping my arms around his small frame. He smelled of chocolate frosting and vanilla shampoo. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I whispered into his hair. "I brought you something special." But before I could even reach into my bag, Claire's hand was on his shoulder. "Ethan, what did we talk about?" she said with a tight smile. "Hands washed before hugs. And you should be playing with your cousins, remember?" Her tone was sweet enough for the guests, but the message was clear. I wasn't clean enough, not fit for her child. Ethan frowned, but obeyed. I stood up slowly, smoothing my skirt. Dinner was worse. The dining table stretched across the room like something out of a magazine. Fine china, crystal glasses, centerpieces I'd never dream of buying. I was seated at the very end of the table between an empty chair and a man I barely knew who talked nonstop about emerging markets and angel investments. Daniel caught my eye once during the salad course. He gave a weak smile, but when Claire leaned in to whisper something, he quickly looked away. My heart sank. And then, mid-main course, Claire raised her wine glass and said loudly enough for the whole table, "So, Evelyn Daniel tells me you're still working with that, what is it, tiny cleaning service?" She laughed, like it was a joke. I flushed. "I own a small company." "Yes," I said softly, not wanting to draw attention. "How sweet," she said. "My mother always said hard work is noble." "Evelyn runs a cleaning company," she announced to the woman beside her, who offered me a polite but visibly distant nod. It wasn't the word sit, was the tone. The performative kindness masking condescension. The signal to everyone that I was someone to be pitied, not respected. I kept my eyes on the table, trying to focus on the roast chicken that now tasted like dust. The conversation around me continued about vacation homes in the Hamptons, private school waitlists, and market portfolios. I had nothing to say that anyone cared to hear. And then came dessert. Ethan escaped from the kids' table and climbed into my lap, chocolate smudging his fingers. "Grandma, Will you tell me the story about the princess who saved herself? He asked, eyes wide with anticipation. It was our tradition. A bedtime tale I'd made up years ago about a princess who didn't need rescuing. But before I could open my mouth, Claire shot to her feet. Ethan, down. Now, she snapped. You'll ruin your outfit. But I want a story, he protested. She needs to leave, Claire said, her voice sharp, cold. You're making a scene. Everyone turned. Forks paused midair. The man beside me actually stopped mid-sentence. I think it's time you went home, Evelyn, she said. You're disrupting things. Daniel stood slowly, face pale. Claire, please, she's my mother. Then she should have better manners, Claire cut in. She's embarrassing us. 20 pairs of eyes on me. I rose without a word. The birthday sweater still sat unopened in its bag. The night air hit me like a slap. Cool, crisp, and indifferent. I stood on the porch a full 10 seconds before I could trust my legs to move. My hands trembled as I reached into my purse for the car keys, the gift bag still dangling uselessly from my wrist. I didn't remember walking to the driveway. I didn't remember climbing into the car. I just remembered 20 pairs of eye strangers watching me be dismissed from my own grandson's birthday. Not one of them said a word. Not even Daniel. The ride home was a blur of traffic lights and ache. Ashland's downtown was quiet this time of night. Cafes dimmed. Bookstores closed. Families huddled indoors under warm lamps and thick blankets. I drove past them all with the brittle silence of someone breaking quietly inside. When I finally parked outside my small Condoa 2-bedroom walk-up I'd moved into after Daniel got married, I sat for a moment staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror, white hair neatly pinned back. The good earrings, the dress I used to think made me look elegant. Now, I just looked old. Not in a pitiful way, just dismissed. And yet, somewhere beneath the humiliation, beneath the tight, hot knot in my chest, there was another feeling, a colder one, a sharper one, something that hadn't stirred in a long time. Resolve. Claire thought I didn't know my place. She'd made that perfectly clear loudly, publicly, with her manicured hand gripping her wineglass like a queen issuing orders. Tomorrow, I'd show her exactly where I belonged. And where she did. At 6:30 the next morning, I arrived at Meridian Technologies. The office tower was still bathed in dawn's quiet hush. The glass panels reflected the soft watercolor of morning sky. Few people were there, only security, early shift custodians, and those who couldn't sleep, like me. Morning, Mrs. Brooks, James at the front desk said, a bit surprised. You're in early. Couldn't sleep, I said honestly. He nodded, used to my unannounced arrivals. I'd been doing this job long enough to know that sometimes answers come before the sun rises. The elevator to the 42nd floor hummed softly as I rose alone to the executive's suite. My corner office was quiet, untouched. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the sleepy town and the first stirrings of traffic below. But I wasn't interested in the view. I booted up my computer, logged in, and began typing. Zariah Claire Whitmore Brooks, Digital Marketing Director, 18 months with the company, hired shortly after moving to Ashland. Her file popped up with the usual HR polish. Education from a top-tier school. References glowing. Phrases like visionary leadership and modern workplace innovation. I scrolled further. Project records, client presentations, peer reviews, and then 3 formal complaints. Filed, reviewed, dismissed. The names hit me like small hammers. Denise Harper, 61, senior accountant. Claimed Claire humiliated her during a budget review meeting. Called her methods antiquated and suggested she make space for people who understand how real business works. Frank Delgado, 58, IT specialist. Reported Claire required him to work overtime on her personal branding projects, then criticized his sluggish response time and questioned whether people his age should still be in tech. Carolyn Bennett, 63, security supervisor. Claire reportedly filed a complaint when Carolyn failed to clear a conference room fast enough for a last-minute schedule change. The result? Carolyn reassigned to overnight shifts. My fingers tightened on the mouse. It wasn't just me. Claire had a paterna strategy. She targeted older employees, diminished their experience, manipulated records, weaponized HR protocols that were designed to protect, and she got away with it, repeatedly, because she smiled the right way in meetings, because she said the right buzzwords, because no one wanted to challenge the ambitious, confident young executive with polished shoes and a sleek LinkedIn profile. Well, I was challenging her now. At 7:45, I called Martha. She'd been my assistant for 15 years, ever since Meridian was a one-room office above a bakery, back when I made my own coffee and fixed the printer myself. She answered on the second ring. "Morning, Martha. I need a discreet favor." Her pause was brief. "Of course, Evelyn. Who?" "Start with the digital marketing department. Pull all project logs, email correspondence, internal mnemosiny thing that includes performance notes or communication with employees over 50. Another pause. "Understood." She didn't ask why. She didn't need to. Martha knew. She always knew. By 9:15, she was back with a stack of files, physical and digital. She closed my office door behind her, laid them on my desk, and said only, "You might want to sit down." She wasn't wrong. Not only had Claire's team experienced the highest turnover rate in the company in the last 12 months, but exit interviews told a common story. Cold leadership, dismissiveness toward older workers, and a culture of pressure dressed up as modern expectations. One email exchange between Claire and another manager turned my stomach. "You seriously expect me to collaborate with Carolyn on the Morrison project? The woman doesn't know how to use Slack. Why are we keeping these dinosaurs around? They take up space that could go to people who actually get the digital landscape." The Morrison project, I remembered that one. It had been a big win, brought in a major client and a bonus Claire had flaunted all over our quarterly newsletter. Carolyn had come up with the campaign's tagline. I had the meeting notes to prove it. And still, she ended up on the night shift. At 10:30, my office phone buzzed. Martha's voice was quiet. "It's Daniel." I stared at the blinking light for a long moment before picking up. "Hi, Mom." His voice was tired, worn down. I wanted to say I'm sorry. About last night. I said nothing. Claire's sorry, too. She was stressed. The party was a lot. She meant every word. I said softly. He was quiet for a beat. I should have said something. I wanted to. You know how Claire gets. "Yes," I said. "I do. She's under a lot of pressure right now. At work. She feels like people are judging her." I almost laughed. "They're not judging her, Daniel. They're surviving her." He sighed. "Can we come over this weekend? Just the three of us, dinner. Ethan's been asking for you." He hesitated. "Let me think about it." "I get it. I do. She's trying." "No," I said quietly. "She's calculating." He didn't argue. "Not really. I'll call again." I didn't say goodbye. At noon, I called HR. "Tracy, I need to meet with you. Today, bring the full org chart for the digital marketing division." 20 minutes later, she sat across from me, pale and nervous. I walked her through everything quietly, firmly, without emotion. When I was done, she exhaled like she'd been holding her breath the whole time. "Mrs. Brooks, I didn't know it was that serious." "You should have. Some of these complaints never reached your office. They were handled internally. That's part of the problem." She nodded, shamed but grateful to be told the truth. "What do you want me to do?" I leaned forward. "I want Claire transferred. Immediately." "To where?" I thought of Carolyn, of Denise, of Frank. "The basement," I said. "Kitchen staff. Dish rotation." Tracy blinked. "That's unusual." "Tell her it's part of a new executive training program. Hands-on, temporary, learning the full scope of operations. And if she refuses?" I smiled. "She's welcome to find employment elsewhere. I'm sure some other company would appreciate her dynamic personality." That night, I returned home and stared at the unopened birthday gift still sitting on my kitchen table. It was silly, really. Just a sweater. Soft yarn. Love stitched into every loop. But somehow, it felt heavier than anything else in the room. I pressed it to my chest and breathed in. Tomorrow, Claire would learn what it meant to be invisible, to be overlooked, To be on the receiving end of judgment dressed as elegance, and just maybe, if she was capable of learning anything at all, she might finally understand the cost of cruelty. If you're still watching, comment 1 so I know you're still with me. The industrial kitchen on the basement level of Meridian Technologies smelled like bleach and steel and steam. Steam from the enormous dishwasher that hissed like a living creature. Bleach from the buckets lined along the floor. Steel from the racks of cookware and trays stacked high and clattering. It was a world far removed from the 42nd floor, no velvet chairs, no panoramic views, no orchids in marble vases. And yet, this was the engine that kept the place running. Without this floor, no catered meetings, no executive luncheons, no cocktail receptions in the sky-high boardrooms. Just people sweating, scrubbing, lifting, wiping. Unseen. And now, Claire was one of them. I watched from the hallway just outside the swinging kitchen door. The uniform I wore, navy work pants and a borrowed maintenance vest, was loose on my frame. My silver hair was tucked beneath a ball cap. A clipboard dangled at my side like a passable disguise. Nobody looked twice at a cleaner. 3 days. For 3 days I had been watching. Claire worked beside Rosa at the dish station. Her custom nails were chipped, her hands raw. Her perfectly styled hair was tied back beneath a flimsy kitchen cap. The dark circles under her eyes had deepened. But the fury? Oh, that was still intact. "This is a joke," she hissed on day 3, scrubbing at a tray with more vigor than needed. "I have a master's in marketing. I was on track for senior leadership. Now they've stuck me in here like I'm some dishwasher." "You are," Rosa said simply, stacking clean plates. "Just like the rest of us." Claire scoffed, turning to the young man working the drying rack. "Caleb. Poor Caleb. Sweet. Over-helpful Caleb." "Luis," she started. "It's Caleb," he corrected gently. "Whatever. You're young. Tell me this isn't insane. I don't belong down here." He hesitated, glancing around. "It's temporary. Management said it was part of a restructuring." "Restructuring?" Claire snorted. "This is punishment. Someone upstairs has it out for me." She didn't know how right she was. I moved a little closer, sweeping the mop across the floor in wide, slow arcs. I could hear her clearly now. Every biting word. "This is what happens when you try to change things," she continued. "Old guard gets threatened and suddenly you're in exile. My department was the only one innovating. And now I'm hair-scraping leftover casserole from dishes like a common cook." "Common?" Rosa's voice was quiet but cutting. Claire turned, visibly bristling. "I didn't mean you. I meant..." "You meant people like me," Rosa said, wiping her hands on her apron. "People who speak with accents, who don't have degrees from fancy schools. People who make sure you had a clean fork at lunch and a full water glass at your meetings." Claire rolled her eyes. "Don't twist my words." "No need," Rosa replied. "They twist themselves." That evening, I stayed longer than I needed to. After most of the staff had left, I slipped into the back office and sorted through some old kitchen logs. And then I heard it. Claire's voice sharper than usual. She looked at me like I was trash, she snapped to Caleb, who was patiently wiping down the counter. Like I didn't belong here. Which I don't. "She was just responding to what you said," Caleb said carefully. "I mean, you kinda implied she wasn't worth as much as you." "Because she's not," Claire said plainly. I froze. She's a lifer in a job that takes 0 skills. I was managing national campaigns 2 weeks ago. Rosa doesn't even know how to use a spreadsheet. She can feed 50 people in under an hour and manage a chaotic kitchen without breaking a sweat, Caleb said, soft but steady. "She's a cafeteria lady, Caleb. Be serious." "You know what I think?" Caleb said after a moment. "I think maybe you're scared. That down here, none of your degrees or buzzwords mean anything." Claire scoffed. "Please." "Because down here," Caleb continued, "no one cares who you married. No one's impressed by your LinkedIn profile. You have to earn your place, and I don't think you know how." On day 4, I approached her directly. Not as Evelyn, not as CEO, just as another body in the kitchen with a mop and a clipboard. She was bent over the sink, arms elbow-deep in suds, muttering about the dish soap being inferior. "Excuse me," I said hoarsely, lowering my voice. I need to mop around your station. Claire didn't even look at me. Fine. Just don't get in my way. I stepped closer, slowly mopping near her feet. I stayed long enough to hear her continue venting to Rosa. This is absurd, she grumbled. I should be upstairs right now reviewing campaign data. Instead, I'm listening to a woman from housekeeping tell me how to organize trays. You mean Maria? Rosa asked. Is that her name? Claire said with a slight smirk. She's been here 18 years. Well, Claire replied. Maybe that's the problem. My grip tightened on the mop handle. Not once. Not once had she apologized. Not to Carolyn, not to Frank, not to Denise, not even to Caleb or Rosa, and certainly not to me. Every interaction, every moment, only confirmed what I'd feared. This wasn't about a misunderstanding. This was who she was. That night, I didn't go straight home. I drove through town, past the park where Daniel learned to ride his bike, past the old bakery where I used to buy coffee before Meridian even had an office. I thought about the early years, the loneliness, the hustle, the constant self-doubt of a woman starting a tech company in her 40s when everyone around her was 25 and male. I thought about my employees, the ones who stayed through recessions and mergers, the ones who didn't have degrees but had loyalty, the ones who made my dream work quietly, faithfully, without fanfare. And then I thought about Claire. Claire, who had never once respected what she'd been given, who had mistaken inheritance for merit, who had built her confidence on the backs of those she dismissed. And suddenly, I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I arrived at work earlier than usual. Martha raised an eyebrow. Coffee? She asked, already reaching for the pot. No, thank you, I said. But I do need you to schedule a meeting. 10 o'clock, my office, Claire Brooks. Martha didn't ask. She just nodded. And Martha? I added. Yes? Have her come up using the main elevator. Let her walk through the executive floor. Understood. At 10 a.m. sharp, Claire walked into my office. I was standing by the window, hands behind my back, spine tall. She didn't recognize me at first. She saw only the silhouette, the hair let down, the suit, tailored and sharp. Then I turned around. The look on her face was worth every second of restraint I'd practiced. Recognition, shock, and then fear. You! She gasped. What are you doing here? I work here, I said simply. This is my office. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Butho? You said at the party you said. I said I owned a business. I never said what kind. She stumbled back a step. You're the CEO? I am, I said calmly. And the founder. 35 years this December. Claire dropped into the chair in front of my desk like her legs had given out. I didn't know, she whispered. That's the point, I replied. You didn't care to. She swallowed hard. Her hands fidgeted in her lap. I made mistakes, she said. You made patterns, I corrected. Her eyes met mine. For once they were unsure. I can explain. I've already read your explanations, I said, nodding toward the file on my desk. In triplicate. All signed. All very polished. Claire's shoulders slumped. So, what happens now? I tilted my head. That depends. Are you here to change her, to retaliate? I just want my job back, and I want integrity back in my company. Silence. You'll stay in the kitchen, I said at last. You'll learn what it means to be part of the team, not above it. For how long? Until I believe you've earned your place again, or until you choose to leave. She stared at me. I'm not cleaning dishes for the rest of my life. Then you'd better learn fast. Daniel sat in the parked car outside Evelyn's condo, staring at the brownstone building with tired eyes. He hadn't been here in almost a year. The last time was just after Ethan was born, when Claire had still been playing the doting daughter-in-law. She brought flowers. Evelyn had made her famous chicken and dumplings. Everything felt soft and new and full of hope. Now it felt like walking back into a place he'd slowly abandoned without fully realizing he had. He stepped out of the car, ran a hand through his hair, and walked up the steps with the hesitance of someone who wasn't sure he'd be welcome. The door opened before he could knock. Evelyn stood there in her simple cardigan, face calm but unreadable. "Hey, Mom," he said. "Daniel." A pause stretched between them like a tightrope. He cleared his throat. "I brought Ethan," he said, gesturing toward the car where a small face was pressed eagerly to the window. "Good," she said. "He's always welcome." Daniel released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. She opened the door wider. Inside, Ethan curled up beside Evelyn on the couch like he'd never been away. His chubby hands clutched a juice box while she ran her fingers gently through his soft curls. Daniel sat across from them, elbows on his knees. "He misses you," he said. "I miss him, too. He doesn't understand what's going on." "I hope he never does," she replied. Silence settled again. Daniel glanced around the room. It was tidy, modest, familiar. Nothing extravagant. Just warm. "I didn't know," he said at last. "About Claire. About how she treated people." Evelyn raised her eyebrows. "Didn't you?" "I mean, I didn't want to believe it. She can be difficult. But I thought it was stress. The job. Expectations. She used to be different?" Daniel looked down. "She used to be charming." Evelyn said nothing. "She's not a bad mother," he offered weakly. "She's just ambitious." "So was I," Evelyn said. "Difference is, I never stepped on people to climb." Danielle winced. "I'm sorry about the party. I should have said something." "Yes, you should have. I didn't know what to say." "That's enough. Would have been a good start." That one stung. He nodded. "I'm trying to make it right," he said. "Are you?" she asked softly. "Or are you just trying to keep the peace?" Daniel didn't answer right away. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Scared of what happens if I confront her. Scared of losing Ethan. Scared of tearing our family apart." Evelyn looked at her grandson, now fast asleep against her side. "The family's already torn," she said. "Now you decide whether to stitch it or pretend the hole isn't there." Meanwhile, downstairs at Meridian, Claire was washing her hands in the break room sink, scrubbing harder than needed. Her hands were dry and raw. Her nails since her signature were down to stubs. Her once flawless complexion was flushed from heat and frustration. But her eyes? Sharp. Calculating. She had spent 5 days in the basement, and she had a plan. The sympathy card. It started subtly. "Apologies," murmured to Rosa and Caleb. "I'm so sorry I snapped. This has been humbling. I realize now I took things for granted. I hope you'll let me earn back your trust." To her credit, Rosa gave nothing away. She nodded politely, but her eyes never softened. Caleb, being younger and more hopeful, offered cautious encouragement. "You're learning," he told her one evening. "That matters." Claire smiled sweetly. "I am." She began cleaning faster, volunteering for extra shifts, asking others if they needed help. She knew how to perform humility. She'd studied enough TED Talks about emotional intelligence to fake the language. But she also kept watching. Every day she eyed the elevators, memorizing schedules. Watched who visited Evelyn's office. Noted who got summoned and who didn't return smiling. Evelyn wasn't just punishing her. She was preparing something. Claire needed to be ahead of it. Back upstairs, Evelyn sat across from Martha, reviewing a printed report. "These are the full staff responses?" Evelyn asked. "Yes," Martha said. "We distributed the anonymous questionnaire last week. Focused on department culture, leadership style, morale, and suggested improvements." Evelyn flipped through the pages. The comments were clear. "Since Claire joined, the environment has become toxic. I'm scared to speak up. I don't want to be seen as old-fashioned or difficult. We need leadership that listens, not lectures." And then one that stopped her cold. "I used to love coming to work. Now I sit in my car and wait until the very last minute, every day." She read it twice. "Put together a summary," she said. "I want this presented at the next board meeting." "And Claire?" "She's playing the long game," Evelyn said. "Let her. So am I." On Sunday, Evelyn received an email. Subject: Apology. From Claire, Brooks at Meridiontech. Come. "Hi, Evelyn. I hope you'll allow me to speak plainly. I owe you an apology, many, in fact, for how I spoke to you at Ethan's party, for the way I've acted at work, for the arrogance I didn't realize I wore like a second skin. These last few days have been eye-opening, humbling, difficult in ways I probably deserved. I know I've hurt people, I can't take that back, but I want to do better. Please consider this a first step. Sincerely, Claire. Evelyn read the message once, then again. It was well written, measured, contrite, to contrite. It felt like it had been edited several times, like someone had Googled how to apologize to a CEO and built it from templates. She didn't reply. Not yet. That night, she called Carolyn Bennett. Carolyn? It's Evelyn Brooks. There was a pause on the other end. Oh, hello, Mrs. Brooks. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for not seeing it sooner, for not stepping in earlier. You had a company to run, Carolyn said gently. I had people to protect. There was a silence. Then Carolyn's voice, softer now. Thank you. I want you to come back, Evelyn said. Full-time. Your choice of shift. And if you're willing, help me rebuild what we lost. Another pause. Then, I'd be honored. At the same time, Claire sat in her apartment, phone in hand. No reply. She refreshed her inbox. Nothing. She stared at the framed photo on her desk, her and Daniel, smiling at a fundraiser 2 years ago. Back when the world seemed like it would bend for her ambition. It wasn't bending now, and Evelyn wasn't replying. She tapped her fingers on the desk, lips tightening. If the apology didn't work, then maybe it was time for Plan B. The boardroom on the 38th floor hadn't changed much in 30 years. Same heavy walnut table, same leather chairs that squeaked if you leaned too far, the same scent of ink and ambition, but today, it felt different. There were new faces around the table, young managers in tailored blazers, diversity hires full of fresh energy, and longtime staff like Denise and Frank, who looked surprised just to be invited. Evelyn stood at the head of the table, her presence quiet but firm. She wore no jewelry today, just a navy blouse, slacks, and a thin silver pin that had once belonged to her husband. I called this meeting, she began, because something has to change. She let the silence stretch a moment before continuing. We have let arrogance masquerade as innovation. We've allowed intimidation to pass as leadership, and we've treated the people who built this company like liabilities instead of assets. Across the table, a few glances shifted, some uncomfortable, some hopeful. I'm implementing a new mentorship program, she said, effective immediately. Mortimers. It will pair senior employees, those with more than 10 years of experience, with junior team members. Not for oversight, not for reporting, but for wisdom sharing, mutual learning. She turned slightly, looking down the table. We cannot keep pretending that age equals obsolescence. It does not. It equals resilience, patience, depth, and our company needs those more than ever. Frank blinked rapidly, his hands folding in his lap. Denise gave a small smile. And, Evelyn added, anyone who undermines or disrespects that partnership regardless of position will be removed from their team. No exceptions. That got their attention. Some jaws tightened. Others nodded. She leaned slightly over the table. We don't move forward by forgetting where we came from. While Evelyn sowed seeds of renewal, Claire sharpened her shears. She had been careful. Smiles in the break room, helping Rosa lift heavy trays, asking Caleb about his college goals. You'd be great in digital strategy, she told him once, drying dishes beside him. Smart, adaptable. You deserve more. Caleb had beamed. Rosa had narrowed her eyes. Claire began spending her lunch break on her phone. Quiet calls, messages typed with precision. She spoke to Jason, her old colleague still working in middle management. He still owed her favors. I'm hearing rumors, she told him, over a salad in the alley behind the building, that Evelyn's grooming Rosa for something big, that she's restructuring. Jason sounded skeptical. Rosa? The cafeteria woman? She has allies, Claire said. And let's be honest, she's great at playing the underdog card. Jason chuckled. Claire pressed in. If she's being fast-tracked, that could affect your division, especially with the new mentorship stuff. What do you want? Claire's tone softened. Just keep your ears open. If anything odd surfaces, gossip, mistakes, anything, let me know. quietly. Jason agreed. Claire smiled. This was a game, she understood. Not open war. Politics. Back in the basement, Rosa felt it. The shift. Caleb had become quieter. Distracted. He avoided eye contact during dish shifts, and once, when she asked about weekend coverage, mumbled something about a conflict and walked off. She found him in the stairwell later, phone in hand. "Everything okay?" she asked. He jumped. "Oh yeah, just texting my sister." She nodded, not believing a word. That night, she called Evelyn. "We've got a crack," she said. "I know," Evelyn replied. "I see it too. What do we do?" "We wait. And we teach." "Teach?" "We show them what real strength looks like." The next day, Evelyn held the first mentorship circle in the company's open atrium. She chose it deliberately. Open air, lots of glass, no corner to hide in. Denise paired with a graphic designer, Frank with a data analyst. Rosa was asked to mentor a newly hired kitchen supervisor. And Claire? She was invited to attend, not to lead, to observe. She watched from the edge, smiling politely, her arms crossed over her chest. But beneath the surface, she boiled. And then, opportunity. Caleb approached her after the session. "You really think all this will change anything?" he asked quietly. She tilted her head. "I think it's window dressing," she said. "Looks nice. Makes everyone feel warm. But upstairs, it's still about power." He didn't respond. "You know you deserve more," she added. "You could be running this floor, not just rotating dish carts." "I don't know," he said. "I like working with Rosa." "She's great," Claire said sweetly. "But you don't want to be someone's shadow forever." She touched his arm gently. "If you ever want help getting noticed upstairs, I know people." He hesitated. She smiled. The seed had been planted. That night, Evelyn met with Rosa at a quiet diner near the train station. Vinyl booths, coffee refills, pie that tasted like it had memories baked in. Rosa stirred her tea. "He's drifting," she said of Caleb. "I can feel it." Evelyn nodded. "He's young. Claire knows how to manipulate that." "You think he'll turn on us?" "I think he's still deciding who he wants to be." Rosa sipped her tea. "She's grooming him." "She thinks she is," Evelyn said. But she's underestimating him. And me." Rosa smiled faintly. "You're not playing defense, are you?" "No," Evelyn said. "I'm building legacy." Meanwhile, Claire typed furiously at her laptop. She'd begun compiling a case file emails, texts, policy, memes, anything that could make Evelyn look biased, unstable, even retaliatory. She planned to present it to the board as a grievance if needed. She even added hints about Rosa suggesting favoritism, policy bending, questionable qualifications. Jason promised he'd float it to HR if the moment came. Claire was ready. What she didn't know was that Caleb had found Evelyn earlier that afternoon and told her everything. "If you're still watching, comment 1 so I know you're still with me." The boardroom was full. Every member of Meridian Technology's leadership team was present, from legacy directors to young department heads. A polished carafe of coffee sat untouched in the center of the table. No one moved for it. Tension had a way of drawing throats. Evelyn sat at the head, composed but alert. She wore the same navy suit from last week's mentorship announcement. An intentional choice. Let them see consistency, not theatrics. To her left sat Martha, quiet and observant. To her right, a second chair. Empty, for now. At exactly 9 o'clock, the glass door swung open. Claire entered. She looked immaculate. Pressed suit. Hair curled just right. Neutral-toned makeup that signaled both professionalism and humility. "Thank you all for making time," she began, taking the seat across from Evelyn. "I realize today's meeting is irregular, but I believe what I have to share is critical to this company's ethical integrity." Evelyn gave a single nod. "Go ahead." Claire opened a sleek black folder and began handing out copies of her report. "I've spent the last few weeks reflecting on my role here," she said. "But I've also noticed patterns, concerning ones, favoritism, hostile oversight, personal retaliation under the guise of mentorship." She let the words linger like smoke. I believe Mrs. Brooks, while a pillar of this company's founding, may no longer be able to separate personal history from professional leadership. Martha's lips tightened, but she said nothing. Claire continued. I've compiled emails, performance reviews, and scheduling logs that suggest questionable decision-making, especially regarding my demotion. She gestured to the file. I ask that the board review this in full, for the sake of fairness. She folded her hands. That's all. Silence. Then Evelyn spoke. I appreciate your thoroughness, she said, and your concern for fairness. Claire's expression remained composed, but her eyes flashed triumph. I'd like to introduce someone, Evelyn continued. She stood, walked to the side door, and opened it. Caleb stepped in. His eyes were wide, nervous but steady. He walked to the chair beside Evelyn and sat down, hands in his lap. Claire blinked. Caleb? Evelyn nodded toward him. You said you wanted the truth, Claire. Caleb would like to help provide it. He cleared his throat. I worked with Claire for 6 weeks in the basement kitchen, he began. At first, I thought she was learning, changing. He glanced briefly at her. She apologized, said she wanted to do better, and I believed her. Claire's jaw tensed. But she wasn't trying to grow, Caleb said quietly. She was manipulating. He turned to the board. She approached me, told me Rosa was getting favoritism, said Evelyn was using her to build a backdoor leadership team, told me I should keep my eyes open and report anything odd. There were gasps. Some eyebrows shot up. She also said if I helped her build a case, she'd get me promoted. Said she had people who could fix things. Claire stood abruptly. That's a lie. Caleb didn't flinch. I saved the texts, he said, and emails. Some were sent from her personal account. He reached into his bag and slid a printed copy across the table. The room went quiet as a few board members leaned in to read. Claire turned to Evelyn. This is entrapment. You had him spy on me. No, Evelyn said calmly. You did that yourself. You just chose the wrong person. Claire laughed once, bitterly. So that's it? A kitchen kid turns on me and you all believe it? Evelyn stood. This isn't just about Caleb. It's about Rosa, Carolyn, Denise, Frank. Every person you stepped on to climb a little faster. She looked around the table. I let this go too long. That's on me. But not anymore. She turned to the board. I'm calling for a formal review of Miss Claire Brooks's conduct, including abuse of authority, employee manipulation, and ethical violations. Claire opened her mouth, but Evelyn raised a hand. You're on administrative leave. Effective immediately. Security had already been notified. 2 plainclothed staff waited at the door. You're welcome to reapply in 6 months, Evelyn added. But not here. Claire's voice cracked. Daniel will hear about this. I hope so, Evelyn said. Maybe he'll finally see. Claire's expression crumbled for the first time. I was trying to protect my place. Evelyn softened, just slightly. Then you should have built it with respect. Later that day, Evelyn found Caleb sitting in the atrium, staring into a cold cup of tea. You did something brave today, she said. He nodded. I don't like hurting people. You didn't. You revealed truth. He looked up at her. I thought I wanted her approval. Evelyn smiled gently. Now you have mine. Caleb blinked, startled. You're promoting me? No, she said. I'm mentoring you. He smiled, and it was genuine. That night, Evelyn sat on her porch with a blanket over her knees. The stars were soft above Ashland. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. I heard. Claire's packing. I don't know what to say, but thank you. Ethan misses you. She stared at the screen, then typed back. Tell Ethan I'll see him Sunday. And Daniel. I'm proud of you, even when it's hard. Daniel hadn't been in his mother's home this often since college. Now, every Sunday afternoon, like clockwork, he and Ethan would arrive. Evelyn would greet them at the door with her quiet smile. Ethan would rush in with his toy dinosaurs, and Daniel would bring something flowers, pastries, sometimes nothing but a look that said, I'm trying. At first, the conversations were stiff, stilted, but week by week, they softened. And somewhere between the 2nd cup of coffee and the 3rd bedtime story, Daniel started to remember who his mother really was, not just the woman who raised him, but the woman who built something from nothing. who carried the weight of both parent and provider, who never complained, but never rested either. One evening, as Ethan napped on the couch wrapped in Evelyn's old knitted quilt, Daniel lingered in the kitchen while his mother washed a few dishes. "I keep thinking about all the things I didn't see," he said, quietly. Evelyn didn't look up. "You saw what you were ready to see. I let her talk down to you. I even defended her. You loved her. Still do," he admitted. "Just not the same." Evelyn dried her hands on a towel and turned to face him. "She chose her path," she said. "And so do you." He nodded. "I want to do better," he said. "For Ethan. For you." "You're doing it," she said. Then, for the first time in a long time, she reached out and hugged him. He held on tighter than he expected. Across town, in a sleek but soulless apartment, Claire sat cross-legged on her floor, surrounded by boxes. Most of her things were packed. Some were sold. The rest were scattered like evidence of a life interrupted. The silence was oppressive. No meetings, no emails, no one asking her opinion. She scrolled through her phone, through messages that had stopped coming. Her Instagram following had shrunk. LinkedIn connections no longer endorsed her skills. She had become background noise. Her eyes landed on a photo of her and Daniel on their wedding day. She looked radiant, confident. She remembered how certain she'd been then, that she was rising, that nothing could touch her. Now, she hadn't left the apartment in 3 days. When the doorbell rang, she flinched. She opened the door to find Daniel standing there, hands in his pockets, gaze unreadable. "Hey," he said. She stepped aside, wordless. Inside, she gestured vaguely at the clutter. "I'm almost out." He nodded, not sitting. "I just wanted to check on you," he said. "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." She crossed her arms. "I'm tired, that's all." He studied her. "You know, I kept trying to defend you," he said. "To Mom. To Ethan. Even to myself." Claire said nothing. "I kept telling myself that you were under pressure, that the job made you cold, that maybe it was the culture. Still nothing. But the truth is, you changed. Or maybe you were always this way, and I didn't want to see it." Her jaw tightened. "I gave everything to that company. You gave everything to control it." She turned away. "I was good at what I did," she whispered. "No one ever gave me credit for that. No one ever denied it either," Daniel said. "But you didn't want to be good. You wanted to be feared." Claire laughed bitterly. "And your mother just wanted to be loved, right?" "Yes," Daniel said softly. "And she earned it." That landed. Claire sat down slowly on the edge of the couch. "Do you hate me?" she asked. He hesitated. "No, but I don't trust you." She nodded, as if she expected that. "Do I still get to see Ethan?" "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you change," he said. "For real this time." Claire didn't answer, just stared at her hands. "Take care of yourself," Daniel said quietly, and turned to leave. She didn't stop him. At the office, Evelyn sat in the break room with Rosa, sipping from matching mugs labeled "Coffee First, Main Argers Later." "We're going to lose a few clients," Rosa said, setting her mug down. "We might. A few younger hires are nervous. Think we're too traditional now." Evelyn smiled. "Let them be nervous. Tradition isn't weakness. It's foundation." She looked out the window. Claire mistook trend for truth, but truth doesn't need approval ratings. Rosa smiled. "And what about you?" she asked. Eowlin tilted her hill. "What about me? You've carried this place on your back for 3 decades. What comes next?" Evelyn didn't answer right away, but in her mind, a door was opening, and on the other side was something she hadn't allowed herself to consider in years. That evening, Evelyn took Ethan to the community garden near the edge of town. He ran between the rows of marigolds and tomatoes, laughing. She knelt beside a bed of mint, pulling a few leaves and holding them to his nose. "Smell that?" she asked. "Yum," he said. "Smells like summer." Ethan looked up at her. "Grandma, are you old?" She laughed. "Very. Are you tired?" "Sometimes." He paused. "But you're strong, right?" She smiled. "Yes," she said. "I am." And in that moment, she believed it. The first time Rosa walked into the executive wing, she clutched her notebook so tightly her knuckles went white. The carpet was softer here, the lights dimmer, the silence deeper. She had been here once before, years ago, to deliver a holiday fruit basket. Now, she was here to attend a strategy meeting. Not as a caterer, as a department lead. The invitation had arrived 3 days earlier in a crisp envelope with Evelyn's handwriting. Rosa, it's time the board heard a new voice, yours. Let's show them what true leadership looks like. Now, as she walked past glass offices and tall ceilings, she could still feel the faint sting of memory of being invisible, of being treated as background noise. But now, people nodded, smiled, said her name, and in the middle of the conference room table, a name card waited. Rosa Mendoza, Director of People and Culture, Interim. At the same time, in the newly revamped basement floor, Caleb was supervising a training session. 3 new hires stood in a semicircle, listening as he explained how the mentorship rotation worked. You'll be shadowing someone from another department, he said. Someone who's been here at least 10 years. That means you're not just learning about logistics, you're learning the heartbeat of the company. One of the interns raised his hand. Like, company culture stuff? Caleb smiled. More than that. It's about respect. The kind you don't get from a slide deck. Rosa appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, grinning. Look at you, she said after the interns left. All grown up. Caleb laughed. You made this possible. You made the choice. They walked down the hallway together, now painted a soft yellow, with motivational quotes in both English and Spanish on the walls. Do you think she really meant it? Caleb asked. That Evelyn's gonna step down? Rosa nodded. She's not the retiring type, but she's the mentoring kind. Think she'll hand it to you? Rosa raised an eyebrow. I think she'll hand it to whoever understands the roots. Evelyn, meanwhile, sat in her office holding an envelope, the same kind she'd used to send Rosa her first invitation. Inside, a formal letter of intent to transition leadership. Not an announcement. Not yet. But the beginning. She read it twice. Then, slowly, she opened her desk drawer and placed the envelope inside, next to a faded photograph of her late husband, a younger Daniel, and herself in front of the company's original building. Her eyes lingered on the photo. You'd like her, she whispered. She's the kind who brings food to funerals. The kind who asks your mother how she's feeling before asking for a raise. Outside, the building buzzed with life. Real life. Not curated. Not manicured. Earned. That Friday, Rosa stood at the front of the atrium for a company-wide address. A folding chair in the back creaked as Caleb sat beside Denise. Near the front, even a few board members watched with polite curiosity. Evelyn sat quietly off to the side. Rosa took the microphone. I used to work in the basement, she began. Literally. A few chuckles. I was invisible to most, except Evelyn. She saw me, not just as someone who could wash dishes, but someone who could teach. She paused. This company was built by people like that. The quiet workers, the fixers, the doers. She looked at the faces watching her. And now, we're building again. With intention, with inclusion, with truth. Applause started, then spread. Rosa didn't smile wide. Just enough. Just enough to know she had arrived. That night, Evelyn invited Caleb and Rosa to her home. They sat on her back porch under string lights and shared sweet tea and cornbread. Ethan played nearby with a flashlight, chasing shadows like fireflies. I want to offer you both something, Evelyn said. They looked up. She pulled out 2 envelopes and slid them across the table. Titles? Caleb asked, confused. Not yet, Evelyn said. Opportunities. One for succession planning. One for partnership. Rosa read hers. Her hands trembled just slightly. This is huge. You've earned it, Evelyn said. Caleb looked stunned. You really trust us? Evelyn raised her glass. You both chose integrity over ambition. That's the kind of leadership I believe in. They clinked glasses. Somewhere, a train whistled in the distance, and Evelyn smiled. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the letter arrived. Not an email, Not a voicemail. A letter. Ink on paper. Folded neatly and slipped into Evelyn's mailbox with no return address. Evelyn found it tucked between a gardening catalog and a reminder for her dental cleaning. The handwriting on the envelope was unmistakable. She stood for a long moment in her foyer before opening it. Dear Evelyn, I'm not writing to change your mind. I'm not writing to ask for my job back. Or for forgiveness. I'm writing because I finally saw myself. And I didn't like what I saw. I was raised to believe that strength was the same as control. That winning meant being right, louder, faster, more confident. But what I've learned these past few weeks is that real strength is quieter. It listens more than it speaks. It holds space, not just opinions. You did that for years and I mocked it. I'm sorry. Truly. Not just for how I treated you, but for what I taught Ethan by example. I would never want him to become who I was. If you ever feel comfortable, I'd like to see him. Not as his mother, but as someone who wants to start over. Not with you, with herself. Thank you for never stooping to my level. That, in itself, taught me more than all my years of schooling ever did. Claire. Evelyn read the letter twice. Then again, she didn't cry, but she sat down in her armchair, folded the letter, and held it to her chest. Later that day, she sent a text to Daniel. Come by Sunday. Bring Ethan. And Claire if she's truly ready. Sunday afternoon was overcast. The kind of gray that makes the trees look brighter somehow. Evelyn stood at her kitchen counter, slicing apples for pie, when the knock came. She opened the door to see Daniel and Ethan, and behind them, Claire. She looked different. Hair pulled back, no makeup, a plain button-down and jeans. No handbag, no heels, no armor. Hi, Claire said, voice soft. Evelyn nodded. Ethan ran past them and into her arms. She kissed his forehead and ushered him toward the den, then turned back to Claire. Come in. Claire stepped inside like someone entering sacred ground. They didn't sit in the parlor. Evelyn led her to the small garden out back, where the basil was overgrown and the air smelled of mint and warm soil. They sat on the bench. Claire held the letter in her lap, fidgeting with its edges. I didn't expect a response, she said. Evelyn looked at her, eyes calm. Sometimes silence is the kindest start. Claire blinked, tears already forming. I was so angry, all the time. And I thought if I could just be respected enough, powerful enough, it would fix something. Evelyn didn't interrupt. But it didn't, Claire continued. It just made me mean. There was a long pause. I hurt your son, she said. And your grandson. And you. And I can't undo it. But I want to be different now. Evelyn studied her face. You can't undo it, she said. But you can outlive it. Claire nodded, wiping a tear. I brought something for Ethan. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, worn copy of The Velveteen Rabbit. I used to love reading this, she said. It made me believe that love made things real. Evelyn smiled faintly. It does. Inside, Ethan was sitting on the floor building a dinosaur fort. Claire knelt beside him. Hey, buddy, she said. He looked up. Are you in trouble? Claire blinked. Yeah, a little. Daddy said you're learning to be nice again. Claire smiled through tears. I'm trying. He considered her carefully. Do you still love me? Her voice cracked. More than anything. Ethan reached into his fort and handed her the stegosaurus. You can play with me if you want. Claire looked at Evelyn. Evelyn nodded once. And just like that, Claire sat on the floor, surrounded by plastic creatures and cardboard walls, and began again. Not with power, with presence. That evening, after everyone left, Evelyn sat on the porch with Daniel. He looked out at the street, sipping from a chipped mug she refused to replace. She's different, he said. She's trying, Evelyn replied. He looked at his mother. Do you forgive her? Evelyn thought for a long moment. I don't know yet, she said honestly. But I forgive myself for letting it go on so long. And that's a start. Daniel nodded. Thank you, he said. For what? For not giving up on any of us. Evelyn smiled. I was too stubborn to quit. They sat in comfortable silence as the porch light flickered on and the crickets began to sing. If you're still watching, comment 1 so I know you're still with me. The calendar said Monday, but for Evelyn, it felt like spring cleaning. Not the kind with brooms and boxes. The kind that starts in the heart. She had a list. A literal one, handwritten on yellow notepad paper, tucked beside her keyboard. Loose ends. At the top, 3 names. Names of former employees who had left not because they underperformed, but because they had been made to feel unwelcome, marginalized, silenced. People Claire had pushed out, subtly or not. Evelyn picked up the phone. First, she called Marjorie Fields, the former head of accounting, a woman known for her meticulous ledgers and unwillingness to play politics. Claire had accused her of being too slow to adapt. The truth? Marjorie had flagged several questionable budget allocations that Claire didn't want investigated. "Mrs. Brooks," Marjorie said when she answered, "I didn't expect to hear from you." "I owe you an apology," Evelyn said. There was a long pause. "No one's ever started a conversation like that with me. I'm trying something new." Next on the list, Thomas Avery, once a lead developer, now working freelance and barely getting by. "I didn't leave," he told her flatly. "I was pushed." "I know," Evelyn said. "I didn't see it then, but I see it now." Silence. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to come back," she said. "Not just as a coder, as a mentor, a breath. I'll think about it." It was enough. The last call was the hardest. Lina Cortés, the company's first and only openly trans employee, who left after months of being quietly ostracized and reassigned. Evelyn hadn't known the full story then, but now she did. "I'm not looking for sympathy," Lina said over the phone. "I'm not offering it," Evelyn replied. "I'm offering respect and opportunity." Lena didn't respond right away. Then, "You're serious?" "Very. I'll come in next week," she said. That Friday, Evelyn held a private luncheon. Not in the executive dining room. In the basement cafeteria, the tables were pushed together. No seating chart, no name cards, just sandwiches, fresh lemonade, and a handwritten sign that read, "Welcome back. Marjorie, Thomas, Lena." They came. Rosa greeted them with warm hugs. Caleb helped set up chairs. Evelyn raised her glass. "I'm not here to fix the past," she said, "but I am here to do better going forward. And I can't do that without you." For the first time in a long time, no one needed a title to feel seen. The following Monday, Evelyn stood before the board. She wasn't wearing her usual navy blazer. Today, it was soft gray. No jewelry. Just a silver pin, the one her husband had once given her when she got her first executive title. "I'm not resigning," she said. Several members looked confused. "But I am stepping back." Whispers. "I will remain chair emerita, in an advisory role only. The company needs a new voice. A voice shaped by resilience, not just ambition." She smiled toward the back. Effective June 1st, Rosa Mendoza will assume the role of Chief Culture Officer. And beginning next quarter, Caleb Jensen will lead the Interdepartmental Training Initiative as Vice Director. She looked at the room, meeting each eye. "I am not leaving," she said. "I'm planting something new." The room was quiet. Then someone stood Denise, followed by Frank, then the rest. Applause, not loud, not wild, but steady, earnest, like rain on dry soil. Later that evening, Evelyn sat on her porch with Rosa. "Was that real?" Rosa asked. "All of it. I thought maybe I'd wake up." Evelyn laughed softly. "If you do, wake me up too." They drank sweet tea, watched the last rays of sunlight dip behind the trees. "Why me?" Rosa asked. "You led when you had no title," Evelyn said. "That's the best kind of leader." In a quiet apartment across town, Claire read the announcement online. No bitterness, no envy, just quiet. She closed her laptop and walked to the window. Outside, a child on a bike wobbled on training wheels. He fell, got up, tried again. Claire smiled faintly. Maybe she would try again too. The drive out to the training campus took less than 20 minutes, but to Evelyn, it felt like crossing decades. She remembered when this part of Ashland had been little more than empty lots and dry brush. Now, the land was being transformed not by skyscrapers or luxury condos, but by purpose. She sat in the passenger seat as Rosa drove, Caleb in the back seat scribbling notes on a clipboard. Still don't trust my GPS? Rosa teased. Not with my retirement plans riding on it, Evelyn replied, half smiling. Caleb leaned forward. Wait, is this really where it's going to be? You'll see, Rosa said. The site wasn't much yet. Just leveled earth, scattered bricks, and a sign that read, Future Home of the Brooks, Mendoza Learning Center. Caleb stopped in his tracks. You named it after, Evelyn interrupted. You're part of this too. Give it time. Rosa looked at the wooden framework already going up. It still feels surreal. Good, Evelyn said. If it didn't, we'd be playing too small. Inside the makeshift trailer that served as a temporary office, blueprints were spread across a folding table. Each room had been carefully designed. Workshops for technical training, soft skills seminar spaces, a mentorship hall, even a small kitchen for culinary internships. Not everyone learns the same way, Evelyn said. We need to meet people where they are. Caleb pointed to a small rectangle labeled Reflection Room. What's that? A quiet space, Evelyn said. No devices, no deadlines, just stillness. Rosa smiled. You really are old school. I'm not old school, Evelyn said. I'm full circle. Outside, they walked the perimeter, boots crunching on gravel. You know, Rosa said, when I was scrubbing trays in the basement, I never imagined I'd have my name on a building. You weren't scrubbing trays, Evelyn replied. You were listening, leading. You just didn't have a title for it yet. They stopped at a raised platform soon to be the auditorium stage. I want the first speech here to come from you, Evelyn said to Rosa. Why me? Because you've earned every word, Caleb chimed in. What about you, Evelyn? You're not going to disappear into your garden, are you? She chuckled. Not a chance. I'll be here. In the walls. In the policies. In the people. Later that evening, the three of them sat on a stone ledge near the edge of the site, eating sandwiches and watching the sun dip low behind the mountains. A breeze rustled the tarps. Rosa looked over. You ever get scared? Every day, Evelyn said. What do you do about it? Keep building. The next morning, Evelyn wrote a letter. It wasn't long, just a few paragraphs, but it was important. She folded it neatly, slipped it into an envelope, and addressed it to the city council. Inside, she requested permission to open part of the center to public community classes, parenting workshops, financial literacy, resume writing for veterans. It's not enough to train employees, she wrote. We have to serve neighbors. She included a check large enough to fund the first year's worth of programs, and signed it not as CEO, but as Evelyn Brooks, citizen of Ashland. Back at the company, word began to spread. Not from press releases or social media, but from mouths, from actions. A single mother in shipping was given flex time to care for her child. An aging janitor was offered a new position in the training center to teach young workers how to fix equipment. An intern struggling with anxiety found a mentor who listened, not lectured. No slogans, no hashtags, just culture, repaired, slowly, the way Evelyn had always intended it to be. At home that night, Evelyn stood in her garden and looked up at the stars. Daniel had just left with Ethan, who insisted on bringing home a basil plant to take care of like Grandma does. Her phone buzzed. A photo from Rosa. The sign at the site had been updated. It now read, Coming soon. Brooks Mendoza Learning Center. Built on character. Open to all. Evelyn smiled, knees aching slightly, but heart light. This wasn't just a building. It was a promise. There was a new chair at the head of the boardroom table. Evelyn noticed it immediately when she walked in, slightly sleeker, a bit taller, the upholstery, a deeper shade of charcoal. It wasn't hers, and that was the point. Rosa stood near the windows, talking quietly with one of the new project managers. She smiled when she saw Evelyn, waved her over. We're just reviewing the updated rollout for the leadership development track, Rosa said. Looks solid, Evelyn replied, scanning the proposal. Rosa hesitated. I was thinking of incorporating some intergenerational mentoring. Evelyn nodded. That's smart. I'd love your feedback, Rosa added quickly. Only if you have time, of course. Evelyn smiled. There it was again, the instinct to reach out, to weigh in, to shape things. But this time, she stepped back. "You've got this," she said gently. Later that day, Evelyn sat on the porch of her home, flipping through an old scrapbook, newspaper clippings from the early days, Polaroids from the first warehouse, a thank you card from a janitor whose daughter got into college on the company's scholarship. She paused on one photo, Daniel at 8 years old, holding a homemade sign that read, "My mom's the boss." She remembered that day. He had spilled orange juice on his shirt and insisted on wearing it anyway. She smiled, then closed the book. That evening, she and Daniel walked through the garden. "I talked to Rosa today," she said. "Oh yeah?" "She's doing well," Daniel nodded. "She respects you, a lot." "She doesn't need to," Evelyn said. "Not anymore." Daniel looked puzzled. "She needs to trust herself now," Evelyn clarified. "Without my shadow stretching across her path." Daniel was quiet for a while. "Is that hard for you?" Evelyn stopped near the mint bed. "Letting go isn't the hard part," she said. "It's realizing that letting go doesn't mean disappearing." At work, Evelyn began to remove things gradually. She canceled her weekly strategy meetings. She took her name off the executive parking spot. She donated half her office furniture to the learning center. And one morning, she brought a cardboard box and quietly packed up her remaining belongings, framed photos, a few awards, a tin of mints. Frank from IT passed by. "You moving offices?" Evelyn smiled. "No, Frank. I'm moving on." He blinked. "Wow, I'm still around. Just not in the same way." "Gonna miss your mints," he said, half teasing. "I'll keep a stash in the garden shed." She winked. Rosa found her later that day, walking the grounds. "You sure about this?" Rosa asked. "I've been sure before," Evelyn said, and then unsure again. "It's part of the process." Rosa bit her lip. "What if I screw up?" "You will," Evelyn said, without flinching. "Everyone does. And if people stop trusting me, they won't." "How do you know?" "Because you listen," Evelyn said. "You don't need to be the smartest in the room. You just need to make space for others." Rosa looked away, then back. "I used to think leadership was about answers. It's mostly about questions," Evelyn said. 1 week later, Evelyn sent out her final internal memo. Subject: Transition complete. To the staff, "I want to thank you all not for your loyalty to me, but for your belief in the values we built together. From this day forward, Rosa Mendoza will serve as your primary executive contact. She has my full confidence. More importantly, she has yours. I'll still be around planting vegetables, reading books, maybe visiting once in a while with cookies. But this company is no longer my story. It's yours." With deep gratitude, Evelyn Brooks. That Sunday, Evelyn didn't go into the office. She stayed home, made French toast with Ethan, read the comics section, napped in the garden hammock. When Rosa texted a photo of the team's first leadership retreat, smiles all around, Evelyn only replied with a heart emoji and a sunflower. Then she set the phone down and closed her eyes. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't needed. And that felt beautiful. 3 weeks after she stepped back, Evelyn slept past 7 a.m. for the first time in 32 years. No alarm, no schedule, just sunlight spilling through lace curtains and the soft hum of birdsong outside her window. She stretched slowly, every bone creaking like an old wooden stair. When she padded into the kitchen in her slippers, she didn't open a laptop. She didn't check her planner. She didn't even make coffee. Instead, she stood in front of the window and watched a squirrel bury something beneath the rosebush. "Good luck remembering where you put it," she murmured, smiling. Later that morning, she visited the local bookstore, a cozy, slightly dusty shop called Fox and Pine, where the owner always wore suspenders and carried a mug labeled Introvert's Rule. She hadn't browsed for pleasure in years. Her usual visits were to buy leadership manuals or Harvard Business Review anthologies. But this time, she found herself in the fiction section. A title caught her eye: The Art of Mending. She picked it up, ran her fingers along the spine, and added it to her growing stack alongside a cookbook for one, a gardening journal, and a novel with a dog on the cover. "Someone's settling in for a good hibernation," the cashier said kindly. Evelyn grinned. "Let's call it reinvention." On Tuesdays, she began volunteering at the public library, reading stories to children in the afternoons, shelving books in the mornings. On Thursdays, she took a watercolor class taught by a retired high school art teacher named Margot, who wore big necklaces and always smelled faintly of lavender and oil paint. "You've got a steady hand," Margot said during the second session. "I used to do a lot of spreadsheets," Evelyn replied. They both laughed. One Saturday afternoon, Evelyn ran into Harold Peterson, a widower she knew from her old neighborhood. They crossed paths at the farmer's market, both reaching for the same bunch of mint. "Go ahead," he said, stepping back. "But only if you promise to use it for something other than mojitos." "Mint tea?" she said. "Unless you're offering to teach me the other thing." He smiled. "Deal." They started walking together on Sunday mornings, slow loops around Ashland Park with coffee in hand. Harold was kind, quiet, steady. He had been a school principal for 40 years, lost his wife to cancer 6 years earlier. Never remarried. Too busy raising orchids and avoiding dating apps, he joked. Evelyn didn't rush anything. But one morning, when he reached for her hand and she didn't pull away, something settled in her chest. Not butterflies. Something better. Peace. Back at the company, Evelyn remained a distant but comforting presence. Rosa occasionally texted for advice. Caleb sent updates on the training center. And when the first cohort of students graduated from the leadership program, they sent Evelyn a group photo holding a sign that read, "She planted the seeds." Evelyn framed it and placed it on her hallway wall right between her wedding photo and a cross-stitched sampler that read, "Leave the place better than you found it." One afternoon, as Evelyn sat on a bench watching ducks float by the lake, she saw a little girl fall off her scooter and start to cry. A woman rushed to her, flustered, young, clearly overwhelmed. Evelyn walked over gently. "Would you like a tissue?" she asked, offering a fresh one from her bag. The woman nodded gratefully. "Thank you." Evelyn crouched down, smiled at the girl. "Bravery isn't about not falling," she whispered. "It's about getting up even if you're scared." The girl blinked at her, then nodded. Later, the mother turned to Evelyn. "You must have been a teacher." Evelyn smiled softly. "Something like that. If you're still watching, comment 1 so I know you're still with me." Daniel stood in the kitchen, apron smeared with tomato sauce, his son beside him holding a whisk like a magic wand. "Do I crack it now?" Ethan asked. Egg poised dangerously above the mixing bowl. "Gently," Daniel said, laughing. "It's not a hammer." The egg shattered slightly against the rim, half in the bowl, half on the counter. Ethan looked up, startled. Daniel didn't sigh, didn't scold. He handed him a towel. "Try again," he said simply. It had taken time, therapy, hard conversations, nights when he questioned everything, his role as a father, his part in what happened with Claire, and how much of Evelyn's strength lived inside him, if any. But slowly, Daniel had started to find his footing. He and Claire weren't together not romantically, but they co-parented. They respected each other. And most importantly, they were both committed to showing Ethan what real love looked like. Not perfection, but presence. Claire had returned to school, part-time, at first, then full. She was working toward a degree in child development, volunteering at a local center for kids with trauma backgrounds. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't come with power suits or corner offices, but it made her heart beat differently, not with ambition, but with meaning. One day, she met Evelyn at a cafe. "I think I was meant to be here all along," Claire said, sipping her tea. "I just took the long way." Evelyn smiled. "Sometimes the long way teaches you more." At the company, Rosa continued to build something remarkable. She reorganized leadership training to include a listening lab, where employees could anonymously submit concerns and leaders had to respond transparently. She restructured PTO policies to better support caregivers. She even hosted a lunch and learn series called Where We've Been, featuring longtime employees sharing personal stories about how the company had changed over the decades. It wasn't about perfect metrics. It was about trust. And trust was growing. Caleb, now officially part of the executive mentoring team, flourished in his role. He still wore sneakers to meetings, still quoted his grandmother in strategy sessions, still insisted that no leadership summit was complete without a shared meal cooked by real staff. "We're not building a pyramid," he often said. "We're planting a garden." One afternoon, Rosa called Evelyn. We're doing a community day at the Learning Center next month. Gardening workshops, resume clinics, even a second-hand clothing swap. Sounds wonderful, Evelyn said. I was hoping you'd maybe stop by. Evelyn lauchet. Will there be cookies? Only if you bring them. The event was bright with sunshine and people. Kids painting flower pots. Teens practicing interview skills. A mariachi band playing under a tent near the food trucks. Evelyn wandered through the crowd, pausing to chat, to hug, to listen. At one booth, she saw Lena, the former employee who had once been pushed out, now leading a workshop on inclusive hiring. At another, she found Marjorie teaching a budgeting class to single moms. And in the garden plot behind the center, she spotted Ethan and Daniel planting carrots. Ethan waved. Grandma, we made dirt soup. She knelt beside them, hands already reaching for the soil. That night, Evelyn sat on her porch with Harold, sipping chamomile tea under a string of solar lights. You ever think about what's next? He asked. Evelyn thought for a moment. I used to think next meant something bigger. Now I think it just means deeper. Harold nodded. I like that. They sat in silence for a while. Not the kind that waits to be filled, the kind that feels like music. Before going to bed, Evelyn wrote a few lines in her journal. We spend so much time trying to leave a legacy. But maybe the real gift isn't what we leave behind. Maybe it's the way we help others keep going. Not ahead of them, not behind, but beside them, all the way home. On Evelyn's 69th birthday, she didn't throw a party. She didn't want one. She wanted something quiet, something meaningful. So she invited Daniel, Ethan, Claire, Rosa, Caleb, Harold, and a few others who had walked the journey with her. No decorations, no balloons. Just a long wooden table set under the old oak in her backyard, strung with soft yellow lights and surrounded by mismatched chairs. Everyone brought a dish. Rosa brought tamales. Claire brought peach cobbler. Harold brought a casserole that no one could identify but everyone loved. Ethan made a card that said, Happy birthday to the strongest person who also makes the best grilled cheese. After dinner, the group lingered under the stars. No one said much at first. It was Rosa who finally asked, If you had one piece of advice to leave us with just one, what would it be? Evelyn laughed. Only one? You're asking a woman who's made a career out of long memos. But then she looked around the table at the people she had once led, once raised, once clashed with and forgiven. And she said this, Pay attention to small things. A voice that wavers. An empty coffee cup left too long. A coworker who stays late every night for no reason. These are the places people hide their pain. Leadership in life is about noticing. Not fixing everything. Just noticing. And letting them know, I see you. You matter. You're not alone. No one spoke for a while. Then Claire reached over and took Evelyn's hand. I wish I'd known that sooner. Evelyn squeezed back. You know it now. That's enough. Later that night, after everyone had gone, Evelyn sat alone with Harold on the porch. I think that might have been my favorite birthday, she said. Even better than the one with the karaoke machine, he teased. Oh, that one lives in infamy, she chuckled. They sat for a while, listening to the wind in the trees. Then Harold asked, Do you feel finished? Evelyn looked out into the dark. No, she said, I feel rooted. The next morning, she took a walk through her neighborhood, past the bookstore, the bakery, the school where Daniel now volunteered as a reading tutor. She stopped at the garden in front of the community center, the one she'd helped design but never tended, and she knelt, pulled a few weeds, tucked soil around a tomato sprout. She wasn't in charge anymore, but she was still part of the growing. In the final pages of her journal, Evelyn wrote, I thought legacy was about leaving something behind, but maybe it's about planting people, not so they follow you, but so they outgrow you, so they rise, not in your shadow, but in their own light. She closed the book, placed it on the shelf, and walked into her kitchen to make grilled cheese. In the end, Evelyn didn't curse the ones who had wronged her. She didn't seek to humiliate, expose, or punish. She simply chose not to become like them, because deep in her spirit, she believed what her grandmother once whispered during hard times, darkness can't drive out darkness. Only light can do that. So she walked forward, not with anger, but with grace. Not because they asked for forgiveness, but because her heart had already outgrown the prison of resentment. She remembered the words of Christ, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And in that quiet forgiveness, Evelyn found her greatest freedom. Not in justice, not in revenge, but in the sacred peace that comes from releasing the weight and choosing to live in the light. If this story touched your heart, share your own journey of forgiveness in the comments. Someone out there may need to hear it. Like, subscribe, and come back next week for another story that speaks to the soul.